We're looking still at the letter of James. You'll remember, if you've been here the last few weeks, James was the brother of Jesus, and he wrote a letter to the early church telling them how best to live. Those of you who know me well will know that I have a very good friend on whom I rely frequently for information and insight. I don't know if you think you know who that friend is, but John and I know it's my friend Google. I'm often heard saying, "I'll just check that on Google." Those younger than me, of course, might have a different friend. It could be ChatGPT or TikTok or some other variation. But I guess all of us appreciate having somewhere we can go to get information, advice, whatever we might need. The trouble is, of course, those sources are not always reliable. It's very easy to assume that if it's on television, if it's on the internet, it must be right, it must be true. A lot of it is fake news, as Donald Trump would say, either deliberately or inadvertently. It's passed off as being true, whether it is or not. So where can we go to find real truth and helpful advice? Well, of course, what do you expect me to say? We go to the Bible. And coming up in September, we've got a series on reading the Bible in our Sunday services. And one of the often overlooked sections of the Bible is called the wisdom literature. In the Old Testament, books like Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. So look at these words. The Proverbs are for learning about wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for gaining instruction in wise dealing, righteousness, justice, and equity, from the very beginning of the book of Proverbs. In other words, the Bible is a source of wisdom about how to live our everyday lives. Now, some people might think that, wisdom comes automatically, like your bus pass and your pension when you get older. Unfortunately, we only need to look at some of the older politicians, important people in the world, to know that wisdom isn't automatic. It's something that we have to work at. We have to actually positively take action. So if we want to act wisely, then we almost certainly need to learn from our mistakes and change our ways, unless, of course, you never make mistakes. It means sometimes stopping and thinking rather than rushing in with the first thing that comes into our head. It means seeking out people that we can trust and taking the time to listen to them, to learn from them. And that requires a certain amount of humility, which I'm afraid is often lacking in this world today. Wisdom isn't the same as just having knowledge. It's what we do with what we know. So listen to these words from the letter that James wrote to the early church. It's from chapter 3. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy or selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace. And when I read that passage, I noticed a couple of times that there is a link between wisdom and gentleness. James mentions it twice. Your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom. And the wisdom from above is gentle. So what do I mean by gentleness? Well, it's a way of life that we have to develop, to work at making the right choices about how we act and respond. So instead of reacting angrily, for example, we can choose to treat someone gently. That's a wise thing to do. It diffuses a situation. Proverbs chapter 15 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath." So, rather than launching into an argument with someone, we could ask them questions about why they feel so strongly or why they think as they do. And that is being gentle, acting wisely. James tells us that instead of being envious of someone or untruthful, we can choose to be gentle, to allow someone else to have more than us, to let somebody else be right, whether we think they are or not. Because surely it's wiser to lose an argument than to lose a friend. Now, I know that's not always easy to do. Anyone who's been sitting in the car with me when somebody shoots past me at 60 miles an hour and then has to slam their brakes on, I do say what I think about them. But if I'm wise, I keep it in my head rather than out loud. And it's not only what we do. Last week, Matt was talking about our words and the effect that they can have. And I'm struck by how often it's much better to stop and think before we speak. And that can be the difference between building someone up and knocking them down. How would we want to be spoken to? Gently, respectfully. So that's how we should try to speak to others. Wisdom tells us to choose our words carefully. And you know, if you're not sure what to say, Proverbs 17 verse 28 says, "Even a fool can seem wise if he keeps his mouth shut." So if we want to follow James's advice and be wise, we can't do better, can we, than to look to the example that Jesus set. I mean, James, his brother, had seen wisdom in action. Jesus was often surrounded by people who thought they knew a lot and equated that with being wise. People like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, for example. They were proud of what they knew, but it didn't translate into wisdom. Jesus' wisdom stands out as being different to the world's. Love your enemies. Forgive those who wrong you. Consider your own failings before you pass judgment on other people. Jesus didn't often make instant judgments. He took time. He asked questions to help people to think through things. And he put into practice what he said. That is the wise way to live. So James will have seen his brother Jesus being gentle with people, speaking truth, showing that it's important to try and seek peace. He knew what it was like to live with integrity, a way of life that brings wisdom to the world, a wisdom that comes not from how much we know, but from how well we know God. We have to keep practicing that wisdom. It becomes easier the more we put it into practice. So the first time you bite your tongue and don't say anything, you might still feel mad inside. But as time goes on, you learn, chill, it doesn't really matter. And that's developing wisdom. And in due course, James says, this will bring a harvest of righteousness, wisdom, peace, gentleness, full of mercy and good fruits. In the world that we inhabit today, Jesus' teaching seems to have got lost in a world of AI, fake news, ambition, influence. But what really matters, more than all those things, is knowing what's important, living with integrity, and being gentle with people. Lord, please help us to learn wisdom. Amen.